Hey there, Ritual here to give a big shout out to you for making it through the hectic holiday season. The magic of those family moments, that was you. And now there's new milestones to prep for in 2025. This new year, check clean, quality pregnancy nutrient support off your to-do list with Ritual. We've done the research to create science-backed pregnancy support like our prenatal multivitamin, natal choline, and fertility support, all designed to be taken alongside each other. But don't just take our word for it. They're also third-party tested for microbes and heavy metals and Clean Label Project certified. So whether you're trying, thinking about trying, or already there, we don't have to tell you that prioritizing yourself can be the hardest part. That's why we're helping you get started today with 30% off a 3-month supply for a limited time at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. At Ritual, we know what goes into the holiday season. The potluck planning, the gift giving, the spreadsheets. So this new year, take a moment for yourself with science-backed support that puts you first. So whether you're focusing on supporting foundational health with a clean vegan multivitamin or supporting your gut health with Symbiotic Plus, do it with 30% off your first month at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Just in case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barrero's Top 5 at 5.
We will also give you the very latest on this plane crash, or a plane that crashed on the runway in Toronto and ended up upside down. A flight that originated in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, a Delta commuter jet heading to, did get to Toronto, and apparently there will be an official update on that mishap very, very soon. Jonny Athletic is scheduled as well for 5:30 today. I'm sure we'll talk more NBA All-Star Game with him and a couple of other stories as well. But it might be, like I said, a little different sort of top 5 at 5 because there ain't much happening today. But it's been a fairly eventful weekend after all, and so I think you're going to try to mix that in, correct?
I am, and I'd also say check your local listings on schools for tomorrow because they're already coming in. I think Minneapolis and St. Paul have both closed already for tomorrow because it's going to be very cold. Couple-hour late start, I know, for our kids' district.
Yeah, 2 hours late.
We'll see if that ends up happening.
Which is, might they amend that, or is that, when they make that decision, is it we're probably locked in on it? Because tonight it's supposed to go down to minus 40, is that correct?
I have 19 below, but it's going to feel like 40 below.
40 below, yeah, that's cold.
Can I give you one grievance from All-Star Weekend?
Sure.
As it relates to your Minnesota Timberwolves and their social media team, who do great work. When Ant posterizes somebody, the video's out like that, right? When Jaden McDaniels has a big block or Rudy Gobert has a good play, it's out. I think I speak for most Timberwolves fans when I don't want to see any more happy and hugging videos of Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns.
Too painful for you?
It's too painful for me. I think I speak for everybody. With the crying eyes emojis, and they're showing the video of the two of them hugging in the tunnel on All-Star Friday or whatever it was, and then they did one yesterday, family, always, they were hugging again. None of us are ready to see that right now, given the current condition of the club.
Well, my theory on that is that Karl Anthony Towns has a little impish side to him. I think he's
seeking Ant out.
Well, I think he knows that Wolves fans are going to see that, and the trigger is going to be, Cat's not with us anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so we don't care. It doesn't matter. We know you're going to say all the right things about Ant, and he's your guy, and you're going to be loyal to him. What's going to hurt is seeing you two together because you're not together.
Right.
That's it.
And we get our Karl Anthony Towns.
You see his stats, by the way?
Yes. Well, how can I miss them?
We
see them every night.
From the field, like 55% this year. Is he like 45% from three?
Probably.
I'll look it up during the break.
Probably.
again, they're not a good defensive team. And that's going to be the issue for the Knicks in the playoffs is against, like Boston, they've lost their last 2 games by 50. So there's still a question of, okay, can you guard anybody? But offensively, this is the best he's ever played. And I don't know how he's doing it because he's playing for the oppressor.
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But we already get reminded of how well he's playing almost daily because he scores 40 and then he's on First Take and then he's on Get Up and then he's on every highlight reel. We're well aware that Towns is doing great. We don't need the family always posts. It just makes it hurt.
I understand.
That's just from me as a 42-year-old super fan who waited in line for Bill Musselman's autograph at the Timberwolves Breakfast Club. Speaking of Bill Musselman, his kid took a tough loss to the Gophers on Saturday.
How humbling must that have been for my guy, Eric?
After endless interviews all week about playing the Gophers, I'm sure Dunkers is devastated. I'm sure their coffee was tough on Sunday after church.
You think they canceled?
They may have canceled. I don't know.
Yeah.
It didn't look good for the Gophers. They were down 14, and then one of USC's best players, or the guy that was killing us, I think got 4 fouls. And they grinded it out, figured out a way. Lukai Patterson, the kid from Minneapolis.
He was great because Garcia had an off offensive night, right?
He couldn't get any shots.
Yeah.
I mean, they were loading up on him.
So they basically said we're going to take him out, not thinking the Gophers had anybody else to do anything about it because most of the season they haven't.
Right. And Lukai Patterson was outstanding. And they played really good defense and chipped their way back in.
Because they were down. Weren't they down like 9 or 11 at the half?
It might have been,
The Gophers were down close to double digits at the half and then did the old, they chipped away at it.
Yeah,
obviously.
it was double digits later in the game, too.
Okay.
And then they were down by, I want to say, 5 or 6 in the final 90 seconds and found a way to do it. So they get the victory. It sounds like the Trojans' tournament hopes are dead. That was the commentary on the Big Ten Network.
Seriously?
Basically, because they've kind of meandered. They've been
way up and down,
And the Gophers were like their last gimme win on their schedule, or what would be a bad loss for them because it's a home game against a team that's not going to make the NCAA tournament. It's a quad 3 loss, which you want to avoid when you're trying to work your way in. They've got like 6 quad 1 opportunities left now. But the whole point of the broadcast from the broadcasters who are West Coast based kept saying they just can't drop this game. You have to get this game. And the Gophers ended up getting it. So now they've got UCLA tomorrow night, a game you can hear right here on the Fan with a 9:30 tip. Gophers pick up their 5th Big Ten victory.
UCLA is coached by Mick Cronin. He has become the odds-on favorite to replace Mike Woodson at Indiana because, again, the Indiana University version of Tony Dungy is the guy who runs the Boston Celtics.
Brad Stevens.
Right? Brad Stevens.
Yeah.
It's like, we got to go get him. This time we got to make him an offer
give him a call
that he won't refuse. And every time Stevens has to send out a statement, and he did it already again this time, saying, I love you guys. I love the Indiana University.
I'm a Hoosier.
I'm a Hoosier my whole life, but I'm a Celtic, man, and I love being a part of this thing. He ain't going anywhere. He doesn't want to mess with it. And so you're down to, I say down to, Cronin's probably be a good coach. There are a couple of other names that have come up. I don't think the Michigan kid, the Indiana kid, Dusty May is going to go. My sources say he feels like he's going to look too bad leaving.
That's a tough
after
one.
1 year.
It'd be tough. I wouldn't blame him if he did if he really wanted. But by the way, Michigan's a good gig too. It's not like he's just leaving some run of the mill job. I mean, Michigan's been to more Final Fours the last 20 years than Indiana's been, right? I mean, I get why it would matter to him because he was a manager there for Coach Knight, which is, of course, a huge Indiana thing. But Michigan is a good gig, man.
It is a good gig. There's no question.
That's a really good gig.
I'm looking at the Big Ten standings right now. So USC is at 6-8. Indiana's at 6-9. Iowa's at 5-9. Minnesota's at 5-9. Rutgers. There's a bunch of teams bunched up.
Yep.
So they're not. And to make the Big Ten tournament, you have to. You can't finish in the bottom 3, right? Isn't it the bottom 3 that don't make it?
Yes, 1 through 15 go.
Okay. So 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. We're tied for 10th, it looks like. But Indiana is only a half game ahead of us because they've played one more game.
Right.
USC is only a game ahead of us. Oregon's only a game. So I haven't looked at our schedule lately. I think it actually gets softer.
It does.
We played a much tougher schedule early.
Yep.
And for USC and for Eric Musselman, who is used to great success, the transition has not been, my guess is, quite as easy as Trojan fans had hoped, and perhaps Eric had hoped. Meanwhile, your guy, Richard Pitino, didn't he win another big one?
They are 22-4.
22-4. Are they ranked, or is it just a soft enough schedule that
just
they're not?
outside of the rankings that came out today. St. John's with the elder Patino is 22-4.
Have you heard his halftime speech?
I just watched
Speaking of social media.
I just tweeted it out. I said I want it photoshopped with a young Richard at the family living room or the couch.
It's, again, he's 106.
Yeah.
He's been in and out of all sorts of controversies and scandals.
Don't matter.
And he's lost none of the juice. And you could even say, well, he's psychotic. That's why he's over the top. It's too much. It's too much. But look at what he's done with St. John's again. They're back in the map.
Yeah. They're Final Four good.
And the speech is, like you said, it's the kind of speech you expect from a guy who's just started coaching, and he's been doing it forever. He's not lost any of his edge. It's amazing.
No. Well, and Richard has said this a number of times because somebody asked one of the players a couple of weeks ago, what's been key to this run? And one of the players said, well, we really don't like Coach Patino when we lose. And Richard has said before that he thinks his dad's greatest strength as a coach is making everyone in the organization feel so miserable when they lose.
Oh, yeah, that they don't want to mess with it.
That they're afraid of the feeling.
Yeah, yeah.
And they basically, and again, that is completely psychotic. It goes against everything that we're taught now, right? In terms of healthy coaching and empowerment. And,
now I'm tired of losing to bleeping Purdue.
That's kind of what it is.
That's basically it, yeah.
But, so I tweeted that out a few weeks ago, and I said, Richard has often said that that's his father's greatest strength. And he said 100% true. Everyone is so afraid to lose that they don't even let it enter their frame of mind. They just go and they win.
All right, I think here's what we should do. I think we should extend the top 5.
Okay.
Let's stay on schedule. You got more to get to, believe it or not.
I do have a franchise tag update.
Oh, excellent.
That we should at least mention.
For sure. So let's do that on the other side of a pause. We got Jonny Athletic will join us at 5:30 as well. It's a very special live edition on President's Day of Bumper to Bumper. Don't go away. Sam Darnold, tomorrow's the day, correct? When we can first do that?
Yes, that's why I wanted to bring it up, because that is the question. And Florio does remind us, while he's not talking about the hockey games, the Four Nations Cup, writing about football, but the annual 2-week window for using the franchise tag opens tomorrow. Now, he identifies the 2 most likely recipients. One of them, Bengals receiver T. Higgins. Most likely recipients that aren't likely to be tagged. Bengals receiver T. Higgins and Sam Darnold. He said Kevin O'Connell said in the Super Bowl week visit to PFT Live that Darnold has earned the right to become a free agent. According to Florio, this implies that the team won't be paying Darnold roughly $40 million under the franchise tag for another season in Minnesota. The point of this entire article was that he thinks, does Florio, it's going to be a very quiet tag season this year in the National Football League, that there won't be maybe any players tagged. Those 2 would be 2 that he identified as possible candidates, but he's not seeing it.
If the Vikings do tag him, do you think they tag him with the intention to keep him or the intention to trade him?
I don't know.
I mean, that's one of the key questions.
Say keep him.
And I don't think I would do it. But I guess if I could be convinced that you can get a lot for him in a world in which people are desperate for quarterbacks, I'd maybe consider. But is
someone giving you a lot for Sam Darnold at 40?
Well, I wouldn't think so.
I wouldn't either. That's why.
Maybe there's a team that maybe the Raiders are desperate enough. Although the Raiders are allegedly are the Russell Wilson rumors true?
Well, I don't know. Russell, A-Rod, those are the 2 that are allegedly on the move.
Yeah.
The Jets obviously made their point on Thursday, I think it was, that they're not going to do it. Going to get to the breaking high school news?
Yeah, I'm sure you saw it too. Maybe we motivated the Star Tribune.
Somebody got a call.
Somebody got a call. I don't know.
Sorry,
or maybe
Ron
they just decided to break the news, and we'll give proper credit to Hagstrom and the Star Tribune, because speaking of the devil, we were talking about a continuation of what Gaardsy got into heavily Friday, the controversy that took place Thursday night during and after the Wayzata-Hopkins boys basketball game in Hopkins. And Hagstrom of the Star Tribune is reporting, indeed, that Wayzata boys basketball coach Brian Schnettler will serve a 1-game suspension, presumably for his behavior during and after said game. He will not be present when the Trojans host Eastridge on Wednesday. Wayzata lost 77-76 at rival Hopkins on Thursday night. The Wayzata head coach upset when a foul wasn't called as senior forward Wyatt Macbeth tried to score on an alley-oop pass with 4 seconds remaining in the game. Wayzata commits a foul less than a second later. Prior to Hopkins going to the free throw line with 3.3 seconds left, both teams' coaching staffs exchanged words and were assessed offsetting technical fouls.
Exchange words is
that light?
Yeah.
Nobody was ejected from the game. No Wayzata players suspended, according to the head coach. Calls to Hopkins coach Ken Novak, you'll be stunned to find out, were not immediately returned.
What's funny to me about that is I've heard from multiple sources that calls from the head coach have been going out all weekend.
Is that right?
So
doing damage control?
You can use your imagination.
So far, there's no indication in this story that there's been any discipline levied on anyone related to Hopkins, both involving students or head coach or assistant coaches as well.
They played a game on Saturday, and everybody was fully accounted for.
Now, that doesn't mean you still can't do something. I asked, who did I ask about? Oh, no, I did. I asked you, and whether the high school league is involved, because they should be. I would think.
I'm trying to figure out what they can do.
Well, that's a good question. Do they have any binding power?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know what conferences
Who's the conference commissioner?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't even know if they have one. I'm sure they have a section representative. I'm sure there's a lot of titles, but because I did hear over the weekend that the high school league had been in touch with both programs.
Yeah.
Now, what those conversations were, what they were about, was it, get your stuff together?
The Hopkins game since was where? Home or road?
That I don't know.
Okay. Because I'm curious to see if there was any effort to say we're banning at least some of the fans who were involved in that, if they can be identified, which, of course, is part of the issue. Although I got to believe with cameras they have these days, there'd be plenty of opportunity to identify who, what kids followed the Wayzata players in either towards or into. I don't know if they actually went into the locker room, but seemed to chase them to the locker room, correct?
Yeah, well, and honestly, it's a high school. It's word of mouth.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, it's not that difficult.
People know. You can do an investigation pretty easily. Not that difficult to figure out.
What else did you have? Oh, that was it. The Vikings item was the big one to extend the top 5-5, correct?
That was the big one. Did I have
another one
else? I don't know if there was another one. No, it was about the tag, and then we wanted to bring up that at least now we do know. And it sounds like Stetler at least talked to Hagstrom, the coach, because he had the comment that I thought our kids handled it really well, which I would agree with that. I thought the players on the court on Thursday.
Well, did you buy the idea, though, that he instructed them not to shake hands?
Yes.
Because of concern that it was going to get out of hand again? Does that that seems a little convenient to me.
I could go either way on that. Yeah, it's possible because the students were already out on the court.
Well, yeah.
I could see why you would think that, but I also, in my heart of hearts, I have a feeling he didn't want to shake anybody's hand anyway.
Well,
whether it's true or not is irrelevant. It's possible, but I talked to a lot of coaches the last 72 to however many hours.
Right.
And I said, what do you think about the handshaking thing? And most of them said, look, you don't want to, especially in that situation, but you probably have to. You probably do have to figure out a way to just get that done and then get off the floor.
Yeah.
Even though I probably wouldn't have wanted to. They all said you don't want to. I'm sure it was a ridiculous scene, but you probably have to find a way to do it.
Well, was there feeling that that there was going to be taunting by the winning players?
Maybe, or just the students already being on the court.
Yeah, but I thought they were. Well, maybe the tape I saw, I thought they were still not. They were sort of like on the edges of the court. I didn't think they were like
kind of by their own players.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder about that. Oh yeah, you're trying to take the high road, and really no, you're just frustrated. You lost the game. Oh no, we're not going to shake hands. I don't think that sends a very good message either. Now, if you feel, in all honesty, I'm worried for my kids.
Yeah.
Then you have a right to say, all right, this situation, we don't. There's not. The authorities here don't have control over it, so we're just going to get off the court. We're not going to make a big scene. We're going to go off the court. The scene, obviously, was a little bit earlier. And again, the foul calls, the alley-oop one, have you seen it? I mean, it looked to me like it might have been a foul, but I've seen worse. I don't know. I couldn't tell because he didn't really have control of the ball that much. I know. I don't know if that needed to be called or not.
Yeah, I think it was a foul, but again, that stuff does happen, as frustrating as it is.
Yes.
I mean, we talk about officiating constantly, right? That
every level, every
time. So I thought it was a foul, but that doesn't mean you can go from, A to Z like happened. And then honestly, the most frustrating part to me about the whole thing was the yipping between the staffs nonstop.
Right.
That just set so much stuff off. And I'm talking about assistant coaches and second-row coaches and third-row coaches, people that aren't even coaches that are affiliated with programs that are yelling at each other. It's embarrassing behavior. It just flat out is embarrassing behavior, whatever side you're on, where kids, your players, are having to separate you on both sides. Is like, just think about that. That's what I said on Friday. Like, do you go to bed at night and just go, yeah, everything that happened there, that was exactly what we want our programs to be?
Delta Airlines flight from Minneapolis. Believe we now have kind of confirmation that were 80 individuals on board that plane. It originated in the Twin Cities and landed upside down, or at least ended up being at some point upside down at Toronto Pearson International Airport, a Delta Airlines commuter jet operated by Endeavor Air, which is a wholly owned regional subsidiary of Delta. It's headquartered in Minneapolis. Endeavor Flight 4819 departs our airport little after 11:30, about an hour late. Crashed in Toronto at about 2:45 local time. That's 1:45. 2:45 local time, according to the Federal Aviation Administration. You've seen videos and photos. The plane ends up upside down on the runway. And there is also some video showing, it looks like the aftermath of the crash, in which there's a lot of smoke. Fire was put out pretty quickly, it appears. And of the 80 on board, Delta is saying in a statement that there are several injuries, but no deaths, no fatalities. 3 of the 8 hurt individuals, including a youngster, a child, were classified as critically injured, according to paramedics. There's supposed to be a briefing, I think, fairly soon. I don't know how much new information they will pass along. And obviously the most interesting stuff is going to be from people who survived being interviewed, right?
For sure.
What the hell? How did the plane end up?
I'm guessing some local angles on that plane.
That's probably true.
Given that it came from here.
CRJ 900 is the sort of plane, I'm sure most people have flown Delta will have flown that particular airplane without any question. So in any case, we'll keep an eye on if there's more information there. We will pass it along. I mean, we may again end up looking at this as a miracle that no one was killed, at least, so we have maybe some critical injuries that are not good, but we may look back on it and say, well, how is that even possible that it ends up? And the plane looks like even to be pretty whole.
Intact.
I mean, it was intact. It was upside down, but nevertheless intact. And then there's video of then passengers getting off the plane. It looks like after folks had worked on making sure there was no fire possibility, and then they were removed from the plane at that point. Jonny Athletic, we'll get his vibe, his read on the All-Star weekend. I don't think he loved it. That's the sense I got. Maybe a little leftover Wolves steam. Maybe we'll get back to the Sam Darnold issue with him as well. Anything on your mind for Johnny? Hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. That number is 646-86.
It's time for Jonny Athletic. Jonny Athletic. Jonny Athletic. And he's on with Dan Barrero right now.
RBC Wealth Management brings Jonny Athletic to you each and every week. He joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Johnny!
Have you seen, by the way, how he is just in his full RBC Wealth Management era? Have you followed him on social media lately?
Well, I mean, I follow him. I don't know. What have I missed in particular?
I mean, it's courtside seats. It's dinners thanks to David FEMA.
What's going on with you?
It's amazing.
Are you going highbrow on us?
He has forgotten his Blaine roots. There's no doubt.
No, I'm finally just, I think, being appreciated in my own time, Dan. I think that's what it is more than anything else. So it's nice that people are finally coming around to it.
Johnny, you travel a decent amount now. I used to travel, obviously, a lot back in the Inkstein Ratch newspaper days. Gaardsy travels a lot now. Have you ever been on an aircraft that was approaching landing and said landing was at the last moment aborted?
I have not. I've had a couple of times where I've been up in the air for a long time, circling runways,
yep.
That sort of thing. But and we've had a couple of rocky landings in my day.
Sure.
But never one that was aborted at the last minute.
Gaardsy?
I've been lucky that's so far.
Aborted?
Never aborted. The long circling for sure.
Yeah.
Diverted?
Choppiness.
I
certainly.
don't believe.
Yeah.
No, I've been pretty lucky in that regard.
I've had at least one abort, and it was here. And I don't remember. I think it was back in the newspaper days, and it was. We are, I'd say 10, maybe 5 seconds from landing. We were close, and all of a sudden that thing just shoots up like a skyrocket.
Yeah,
and you're going, that's interesting.
That's not in the plan.
Sure enough, it's the old. He thought he saw a plane taxiing that was a little too close. Didn't want to take a chance, so it ended up being uneventful. But it's a little bit. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, and I doubt then either one of you have ever been on a plane that flipped.
No, never flipped.
Okay.
No,
but I told you last week, I've been on the flights that they've told us we got to get our weight right or we are going to tip.
A couple people, snarky people have said that's what must have happened here, that it flipped because of that.
Actually, flying into Purdue one time, our buddy who was meeting us at the game mentioned that we were really uneven landing. Like the wings were not where they were supposed to be.
People are vicious.
I mean, we had to get the weight differential figured out.
Listen to this. Do we know? Did the plane flip over during off-boarding? Did everyone rush to the front of the plane? Maybe they should have used the hopscotch method. Too soon? It's like, man, that's vicious.
Yeah, we took a lot of shots on that last week.
We're snarky. Man, it's unbelievable. Well, yeah, of course, we're all trying to get more information on this Toronto plane, that Delta plane that originated here. And a couple people have texted, and I don't know, again, what they've based this on, the possibility of extremely powerful crosswinds. Are crosswinds ever strong enough that it would be capable once you are approaching landing, that it could flip you, could turn you upside down? I would think that'd be fairly rare. But I certainly, like many of us, have had some very choppy landings where you go, man, that thing's, we're going all over the place here. But a harrowing experience for some passengers. I think there were up to 80 on the plane, or the plane seats 80. And my guess is you're going to see some eyewitness reports on CNN soon, right? Because that's the next step. Okay, describe what the hell happened from your point of view. Because if you're on a plane and it goes upside down, that can't be a good feeling.
Unless you're Maverick in Top Gun.
Well, that's it. Right.
I mean, that's it. I cannot even imagine the experience of what that feels like. And to land, and it sounds like no fatalities so far.
Yes.
The initial reporting, amazing that's the case.
Yeah.
But I cannot imagine the feeling of coming in and then flipping over, and then perhaps, I don't know they landed on the roof essentially, or what it was, but that's really, really darn scary, man.
There's some briefings to come, and one will hope we get a little bit more information at some point. It sounds like you got ripped on the power trip this morning. Do you know about this?
Oh, great. No, but it's a day that ends in Y, so why not?
Well, that's it. Clayton from Rochester writes, Fallness referred to Johnny as Johnny Krasnasty on the power trip this morning. Fallness 1, J Athletic 0, according to Clayton from Rochester. Do you know anything about this, or do you have any retort?
I don't know anything about it. I would assume that Clayton's a hockey fan, and that, I do know that Fallness does like to stir it up even more than I do. CC Chad Abbott, if he's listening. But my guess is that he was probably referring to this weekend's events. I was ornery on Twitter this weekend, Dan. With the hockey, why is that a thing?
Yeah.
With the NBA All-Star Weekend thing, I kind of let loose. I take 1 or 2 times a year where I really fire back a little bit, and this weekend for me just had me going. So it was a confluence of events that got me a little riled up, and I shot from the hip all weekend long.
Maybe you'd feel better, and the folks would feel better about NBA All-Star Game weekend if we could contrive and manufacture within the first 8 seconds of one of the 4 games some fights on the court. Maybe if we had some fights like in the hockey game, everything would be great.
Yeah.
The easy way to do that? let the Hopkins and Wayzata coaches coach one of the teams.
There you go.
Just bring it all together.
The answer.
Just let them come. Where's the All-Star game next year, Johnny? LA, right?
Yes,
Into a dome?
LA, yeah.
Just bring those guys out to LA and just let them hammer it out. All-Star weekend. Why not?
We'll get to that story. Well, go ahead. You're going to say?
Yeah. No, that would inject just the spice that we need and that the hockey community loves to set the great examples for all these kids watching in the intense competition.
I want to talk about the All-Star game first and the weekend because it sounds like you got pretty ornery about that. I was busy with Irish dance, but I got some of your flavor. And I'm wondering if you believe that Draymond Green has any connection with reality when he complains, I guess, on the broadcast about, well, you got these games where it's just the 40, and you got all these players who are serious about chasing after the points records for Melo and Kobe and all these guys, and now we got to worry about, an Olympic team playing against a U19 team. This is ridiculous. He does have some awareness of how we got here, doesn't he? And that nobody wanted to take it here, but that the mess, as Charles Barkley said, rightly, the mess the players made, somebody had to try to clean it up. Now, it may have been feeble. It may not be much, but that's how we got here. Draymond has to know that, doesn't he?
I absolutely love that Charles Barkley had that response to Draymond because it is literally Draymond's generation of players that have essentially ruined the All-Star game. Was it always, clotheslining people and going as hard as humanly possible in the 80s and 90s? No, it wasn't always that way, but it certainly was a good faith effort to have a real game. And once we got to, for whatever reason, LeBron, Steph, like all of these, the latest iteration, KD, of guys, it got to a point where no one takes it seriously. I've been at these games. I was not at this weekend's game. I've been at the games previously, and now the Anthony Edwards of the world are not taking it seriously because LeBron James never shows up or shows up very late in the weekend. And because Steph Curry and Luka Doncic are shooting threes from the other free throw line. Like that's what did kind of contribute to the wonky format that they put together, because the NBA literally is grasping at straws, trying to figure something out. Now, what I will say is, Dan, that you cannot, as a league, say, we need to be serious about this, guys. You have to give us your effort, and then put Kevin Hart as an MC in the middle of these games cracking jokes, and have Mr. Beast have a 20-minute interlude in between games that's televised, and all these things. Like, there was way too much of the theatrics that was completely running counter to what the league was trying to message to its guys. But ultimately, they are here because they're desperate, because these guys just won't go. And so, Draymond was way off base, and I'm just really glad that Charles Barkley let him have it.
Well, and I think the kids did help it a little. I mean, again, it wasn't great, but it was definitely better. There was some defensive performance or effort to to try to make some defensive plays. The Rising Stars team ended up losing that first game, but played it tight and made it kind of interesting. And it looked like then the veterans said, okay, well, I guess we're going to have to try to make a few plays here. May I make another request? And I don't know if you're in charge of this. But if you have any influence on this, I hope you do something about it. Can we officially try to take a break from the ongoing ache to ask players who's the next face of the league? I'm so sick of it. And I don't even know what it means. There's no other league or any other sport where this has become such an obsession. Like, is Anthony Edwards the face of the league? Is it Wemby the face of the league? Who gives a bleep, and how do you define it? Generally, it's been a few players at a time, right? And you just sort of let it happen. But this obsession with, we've got to decide and then debate who's going to be the face of the league, because it bores the hell out of me.
I couldn't agree with you more. Number one, like you said, no one is anointed the face of the league. They become it over years of accomplishments, of winning, of carrying themselves a certain way, of responding and rising to the moment. That status is earned, not bestowed. So first of all, it's a silly question to ask. You ask Anthony Edwards, do you want to be the face of the league? Like, what good does that conversation have? But the other part that I fear, Dan, which is why why this keeps coming up, is unfortunately in the NBA media more than any other, it is that way they can, by having the conversation, they can say, well, Anthony Edwards isn't LeBron. So,
that's right.
Wemby isn't Kevin Durant. This guy isn't Steph Curry. And let me tell you why all these guys were way better than the new guys coming in. Like, it's just a way of driving even more division and degrading the current product more, which is a cottage industry for this league's coverage more than any other league, which I just think is so counterproductive. So, but it will keep coming up because of that. It allows hot take guys to get, well, LeBron didn't do this in my day, or that, just like Jordan, just like Magic, just like Allen Iverson, whoever it was. So that's what this is designed to do, is just to get people upset.
So the Edwards doesn't play, dealing with an ongoing groin issue. So is that his call? Do the coaches, Tim Conley, do they say, hey, if you feel anything at all, man, sit this thing out? How does that happen? And does that also look bad late? What do you make of that one compared to the LeBron decision?
Yeah, I think so. The LeBron one seems like it was known well beforehand. And so I think that's a bad look for LeBron to spring it on at the last second after it was clearly known that he was not going to play. I think the Ant one was a little bit later developing. I do know, I have seen him in the locker room struggling with hip and groin issues leading into the All-Star break. So I know that was something that he was confronting. I also do know that there was initially, when he left, he did plan on playing. I don't know if something happened in between or if he just didn't feel right. Or the other thing that we have to think is a possibility is that he didn't want to play at the end. He got through the weekend's events and just didn't want to. I will tell you, in covering Anthony Edwards at these All-Star games, he doesn't get caught up in this. This is not important to him. It's not a big deal. He is happy to sit on the sideline and watch. He does not think like that he can gain any sort of status by getting out there and competing. Whether that's right or wrong, whether you disagree with that, that's just the way that he feels about this thing. He thinks it's a circus, and there's no reason to really, to kind of go all that hard in it. But whether that factored into his decision, or whether it was just purely the groin and the injury, I'm not exactly sure. But I do think it was a decision that was made later. I would have liked to have seen him, before he left, to say, look, I'm a little banged up. I'm going to say, no, I'm not going. Open the door for Sabonis or someone else to go and make it that way. But I don't think it was as clear cut as it was with LeBron.
How did league officials didn't seem particularly enamored with the Chris Paul stupidity?
Yeah, brutal. Like and especially when Wembanyama has said he wants to compete in all these things. He wants to set a new tone. And then you have Chris Paul, and whether it was Chris Paul's idea or Wemby's idea, it's probably Chris Paul's, to make a mockery of this skills challenge. And, he's the guy who called out the Timberwolves for having a jersey untucked.
That's right.
And that got them a win. So he's too cute by half on all of these things. And I think that's a terrible look. He is a former high-ranking union official and players union official. And he's participating and turning this thing into a big farce. I think that's a terrible look for him and for the league and for the players. When you have guys like Chris Paul doing this, when you have guys like LeBron James pulling what he did, like that's setting the tone for the rest of the league to look at and say, this is not a big deal. I do not have to treat this with any kind of respect or sincerity. I'll tell you what, like last year, Dan, Edwards was in the skills competition and he shot 3-pointers left-handed. Terrible look. And the NBA got after him, chewed him out for it. But that's just kind of the the atmosphere that is going into it now.
As you say, part of the league's problem, though, is they do send constantly these mixed messages. The celebrity game, the Friday night game is just absolute nonsense. It's just a complete waste of time. And then you put Hart out there, and he's constantly trying to interrupt people to get his lines in, and you go, well, then you want people to take it seriously. There's too many mixed messages in that regard, for sure. Does it, again, the whole dunk, if the dunk competition, I understand why big names don't participate, but I continue to believe if they don't, it just doesn't do anything for me. If the guys who are winning it don't exist other than this weekend, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Like, look, Mac McClung, watching him dunk, he's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, he can do things that a lot of the other guys can't, but he is not an NBA player. And always, forever and ever, the allure of this contest was, let's see exactly how the greatest athletes in the world really can uncork something in the moment that maybe you don't get to see in games. And the creativity and the flair. And as you know, Dan, like one of the best parts of an NBA, of being around the NBA and watching, is the presence of stars. Mm-hmm. The way that they command a room, the way they take over an arena. Mac McClung does not have that presence. No. He's just not that guy. So even if it is whoever, Pascal Siakam, even if like another all-star cannot do a 720 in the air like McClung can and throw down these amazing dunks, what they do is they command a room and they bring energy to it by doing some of these amazing things. And so I wish that there would be more of it. I saw Zach LaVine tweet that he might have to get back into it. That would be really cool to see something like that, because, otherwise just hire a bunch of like freelance dunkers who do these incredible things and let that be the show, because trying to like tether it to the NBA in some way by saying, hey, this guy plays in the G League and he's played like 5 minutes with the Magic, so he's kind of an NBA player. He's not. That's reaching too much.
Jonny Athletic is brought to you by RBC Wealth Management. What's our time frame for the two rotation players, one starter, Randall, and Dante DiVincenzo? What are we hearing?
Yeah, so we should get a little bit more of an official designation, maybe like Wednesday or Thursday, as they get closer to coming back to play Houston on Friday. My impression, Dan, is that Randall is closer to coming back than DiVincenzo. I think they're both fairly close, let's say, to getting back out on the court, but I don't know that. I know that DiVincenzo will not be ready right when they come out of the break. It's possible that Randall will be ready. It's possible that he may need a little bit of extra time as well with that groin. The other one that we're watching is Mike Conley. I know that he's been doing a lot of work on his thumb to try and get it ready to go and be ready after the break. I spoke to him before the break, and he was cautiously optimistic that he would be ready to go, but he wasn't guaranteeing that either. That just shows kind of where he's at with his injury management. So there are several guys that are imminent in their return or looming, but I don't think it's guaranteed that any one of those three guys will be ready by Friday. We'll get something more official as we get closer to that day.
Is your boy Glenn Taylor going to lose with grace, or is he going to come out screaming and hollering?
So I have not confirmed yet that his plan is to contest or not contest. What my understanding was before the ruling came out was that his side and Lorian Rodriguez's side were happy with how the process went with the arbitration, were pleased with the professionalism of the judges and the panelists, and did not really see cause for an appeal of any sort or a challenging of the ruling. Now, what we haven't seen is like the actual language of the ruling. So there's still a small chance that Glenn Taylor could look at the reasons that the two who voted for Lorian Rodriguez gave for their position and say, no, that's too much. That you went way too far. We're going to challenge that. I did think it was interesting, Dan, that Adam Silver spoke about it this weekend and said I have not heard from Glenn Taylor yet. I don't know if he's going to challenge or not. So that seems like the door is somewhat open. Adam Silver also did say that as far as he's concerned, if this goes forward, there's no reason that he sees that they will not be approved as owners, Lori and A-Rod. So I thought those were kind of really telling statements by the commissioner of the NBA as well. But we're waiting official word for what Glenn Taylor will do. And I'm trying to get to the bottom of that as we speak.
Would it be considered tampering if Taylor tries to call in some old markers with several other members of the Board of Governors? He said, "Hey, I took care of you here. Come on. Come on. You can muck this thing up. You don't have to approve it." Is it possible Taylor might go down that road?
I don't think there's anything illegal or against the rules with that, Dan. I think right now, and even really, I would say over the last 4 or 5 months, there's probably been real conversations from Rodriguez and Lori trying to build up support for their side, and from Taylor trying to build up support for his own side in this. And so if I can say, reading the tea leaves, I think, let's say 8 months ago, there was a real feeling among some people that a scenario existed where Glenn Taylor lost the arbitration but won the war essentially by the Board of Governors voting down Lori and Rodriguez. I think that has changed demonstrably over these last maybe 2 or 3 months, where it seems like, I'm not going to speak with any kind of definitiveness, but it seems like Lori and Rodriguez have done enough to fortify their position with the league to say that we're going to be in good shape going forward. So if Glenn Taylor is trying to whip up the votes, I do think that his job right now is more difficult than maybe it was 8 or 9 months ago. And, Lori is in better position financially. They've added, Michael Bloomberg and some people to their group. They've done a bunch of things to kind of allay a lot of the concerns that you heard about their group going forward. So we'll see. But I just think that if Glenn Taylor's hope is that the Board of Governors is going to come to his rescue, I think that's a steeper climb than it may have felt like it was 8 or 9 months ago.
So what you're saying without saying is that in the end, Glenn Taylor might have done Lori and Rodriguez a favor by drawing this thing out, thereby giving them more time to bring in some big money, maybe to fix some other things that seemed a little bit unstable. They actually owe Glenn Taylor.
I will tell you, Dan, I've had conversations with people sort of on the periphery of this fight who have said exactly that actually there is a scenario where had Taylor not called off the deal last March, and that, Lori and Rodriguez, who kind of had to make these last minute adjustments to their financial package, they were scrambling to get everything together. Had they gone to approval of the Board of Governors last March and just went straight through, they may have had a harder time getting approval. I'm not saying they would not have gotten approved, but it would have been more difficult. But because this is dragged out, it has allowed Mark, Lori, and Alex Rodriguez time to add limited partners that are well-heeled to their group, to get their money situation completely under control. They have $950 million in an escrow account ready to go. They are as ready, more ready than they've ever been to do this thing today, certainly more ready today than they were last March. And so, yes, some people have said to me that this lead time that they were given by having this arbitration panel certainly did help Mark, Lori, and Alex Rodriguez get everything together that they needed to and strengthened their position dramatically.
As we wrap things up with Jonny Athletic on this President's Day, I'm just going to bow out. I'm going to let you and Gaardsy exchange thoughts on what seems to be a love shared historically for the Hopkins boys basketball program. Who wants to start?
I think I've said as much as I need to. I'd like to hear Jonny talk about it a little bit. As a guy who's not as biased against Hopkins as me, clearly I can't have any thought I have is colored by the fact that I've gone up against him,
for about 50 years.
Well, 3 years of my life.
Yeah.
25 years ago. So I can't possibly have a cogent thought on it. So I'll let Johnny go and explain his thoughts.
So I've been accused of bias against Hopkins by a couple of chuckleheads, probably, really connected to the program, who shockingly do not use their real names on social media. This weekend, as I've been critical of them, but I will tell you this: Ken Novak has roots in Blaine. I'm a Blaine guy. I know people who know him very well. I have great friends who played basketball under him way back in the day up there. So there's no bias for me. I think he's a great coach. I think the Hopkins program has been one of the great programs in the state. I watch them regularly because they have NBA caliber or high college players coming through there all the time. But what I have seen this year, I watched that game back against Wayzata. I've seen it before. And most importantly, I have talked to referees of high school, Minnesota State High School, other coaches, parents, people who have been embedded in this thing for a long time. And there is no secret that the Hopkins coaching staff has a reputation for being belligerent, for being whiners and complainers relentlessly throughout a game. Novak is one thing. His assistant coaches are out of pocket all of the time. And it is an embarrassment that they conduct themselves that way and do it regularly. And let me say this as well. Wayzata coaches, awful in that game. Complete embarrassments. I'm glad that there was some discipline levied toward them. But the Hopkins students should not watch another game this season at home because of the way they acted. But they take their cues from Ken Novak and his staff. And it is a stain on that staff's resume that they conduct themselves that way in games. It happens all of the time. It's too much for a program that is that good, that is that proud, that has accomplished that much. And they did contribute to that atmosphere on, last week. Were they mostly to blame? I don't know what the pie chart is, but the people trying to say it was all Wayzata and it was all the handshake thing are missing the point that this is a history with this program of acting this way toward officials that get paid peanuts and take time out of their day, and they get abused. And it's enough. Someone needs to call it out. And I'm glad Gaardsy did it last week. I have no bias in this thing. I have no dog in the fight. I just watch and observe and listen to what other people tell me. And that's just my view on it. I think that everyone in a position of power completely embarrassed themselves last week. And it should be a moment for everyone, including Hopkins, to look in the mirror and say, we got to be better, man, because that's just completely unacceptable.
Well, and that includes administrative staff.
Yes.
For what you have in place, knowing going in that this is going to be a volatile environment. They clearly were overwhelmed. And I would argue if what you're saying is true regarding assistants, then that's on Novak. I mean, your head coach sets that tone and decides what he'll accept and what he won't. And if that's what's going on there, I don't even blame the assistants. I put that on him. I put this on everybody in authority, including athletic directors, principals, in terms of what was set up in that arena that night. And it's the people in charge that, to me, you got to come back to pretty much every time. I'm glad you got that out of your system.
Hang that in the loop.
And that way you guys can go down together. Because I'm distancing myself from both of you. I'm not comfortable with that level of negativity and criticism. I never have been. I never will be.
No.
But I me. I try to duckies and bunny it as much as I can. And
Johnny, you're at NBA games. You're at NBA games more than Dan and me. Who has larger coaching staffs right now, NBA teams or West Metro high school programs?
It's insane. It is absolutely ridiculous how many are there. And that's the thing that has bothered me though. You are an assistant coach on a Minnesota high school team. You are not making anything. It's just like the gall that you have to ride these referees as an assistant, as a third, fourth, fifth assistant on on a high school team, it just astounds me. It's incredible.
Johnny, we'll chat next week. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
That's John Athletic. Send your texts and tweets to him, especially if you are big fans of the Hopkins program and the Hopkins head coach in particular, after what really much, as far as I'm concerned, across the board was an extremely embarrassing night. And it appears that so far only Wayzata has attempted to hold its head coach at least somewhat responsible with a what is going to end up being a 1-game suspension. We went really, 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 really late, but it was worth it, I think, according to our listeners and according to the Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line. So we'll come back and regroup next. Somebody has been clever enough to compile a list that I think we're going to introduce today, but perhaps go back to even the rest of this week, because there are 43 Twitter or X cliches offered up on this particular list from this individual. And
I love this.
The idea is use any of these and you will, I will guarantee to block you. Let me give you a sample of those that apply, and I certainly can relate to several of these. Fixed it for you. Any questions? I'll wait. Do better. One of our favorites.
Rick Kamla. I think I did. I'll wait over the weekend on something.
Did you really?
Yeah, I think so.
Try harder, but you do you. Do your homework. Full stop. Learn history. Next. Check your privilege. Educate yourself. The science is settled. Read the room. Remember that one?
Read the room, guy.
Read the room, guy. And there's so many more, but that's just a start. I like this list. This is a really good, inclusive, maybe exhaustive list on retorts that people come up with, and they're proud of themselves. They think they shut up, they shut up the person they're disagreeing with, that they're bitter with. I think it's hard to top you, but you do you.
Yeah.
Do better. Full stop.
Yeah.
Check your privilege. And what was the other one we said?
Do better. Full stop.
Those are really, really good, are they not? I mean, those are.
It's really not that hard to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's people always ask, like, TV stuff, like to be on the NBA, not on NBA and TNT, because that's a whole different deal. But
right.
To do like a halftime show when you have to talk once and talk for 12 seconds, like it's pretty easy to just limp in with a couple of cliches and do these things. That's why I think the preposterous statement tournament exists, because most people can't talk for more than 30, 60, 90 seconds. But when you can just throw out a couple of phrases on Twitter like that, it does make it a lot easier to just be part of the equilibrium. And so that's why so many of those crutches have been leaned on over the years. I love that list.
Great show, Dan. Lots of snow here in Omaha.
Really?
Stay warm up there in the Twin Cities. I thought the storm, well, I know we were in St. Louis, and I think like tonight into tomorrow, they're predicting like 5 to 10 inches in St. Louis area. And then I thought there was a nor'easter coming in. Isn't New York supposed to get blasted?
That sounds right.
And we're just getting blasted by cold.
It's too cold to snow.
It's too cold to snow.
The snow even gives up.
And so how many of the schools that have just gone right now, tentatively with 2-hour late starts, are going to morph into we're shutting it down? Because Minneapolis and St. Paul, you said they're closed.
That was according to your guy Seth Kaplan from Fox 9. He tweeted that out a little while ago.
And most of the burbs so far, it's 2-hour late start.
Seems like it. Yeah, I saw Lavelle tweet out that Hopkins is 2 hours late. I know Minnetonka's 2 hours late. Did you want to take a cheap shot there?
No, I let it go.
I thought about it too, but I didn't.
I thought about it, yeah.
Yeah, I let that one go. Johnny, I think, ended the conversation.
Jeez.
I don't think anything else needs to be said about Hopkins and Hopkins Wayzata. I think Johnny ended the conversation. You know what? Full stop.
Yeah.
Full stop for Johnny there.
Nut Up's not a bad one, but too. That's a good one. That's one that people have
we get that quite a bit.
Suggested to us every once in a while. Nut Up.
I got that over the weekend a couple times.
Oh, about the Hopkins thing?
Oh, yeah.
There's no question about that. We're still waiting, by the way, for a briefing, maybe to update, or maybe it already happened and I missed it. more information about this Delta regional jet, a flight that originated here in the Twin Cities, ends up crashing on the runway in Toronto and flips. 17, the latest info is 17 injured, I think 2 or 3 critically. No fatalities reported at this point, and a lot of open questions, and maybe I missed the briefing, or maybe there's another one that's coming later tonight. There is now increasing speculation about what we talked about earlier, the fact that there was some really, really vicious crosswinds that might have had some impact upon the landing, which might have caused some things. There is now video also coming from the inside of the plane. The enterprising folks, they know it's 2025, so on their way out, they're using their cameras, they're using their phones to attempt to give a sense of what it was like evacuating the plane from. Do you think you would have done that?
You think you pull out your phone?
I don't think I would. Now, I should say
I might.
I don't think I think I'd be too freaked. Now, maybe by then they knew they were in a good enough position. There was no danger that you say, all right, I'm going to go ahead and do it. But until then, I think I'd be too freaked out to even think about it, let alone do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it for my personal scrapbook, but I would do it, I think, for these purposes. To let people see it and to let people know. I might.
One more break. We'll come back and wrap up the program. Remind you what you missed earlier. Good conversation on the Hopkins Wayzata story from Double T, Trent Tucker. This used to be his job, having to mess with controversies like this. I'll give you a couple highlights when we come back.
Show Wrap presented by American Pressure, commercial-grade pressure washer since 1975.
It's the bumper-to-bumper Show Wrap.
Double T, Trent Tucker, of course, is best known as a very good, accomplished, both college and professional basketball player. Ended up with a ring, including some big shots hit with Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, right? He also, of course, had about a 4 or 5 year stint running Minneapolis Athletics, right? And making a lot of decisions like discipline, like coming on strong when altercations took place, when fans got out of hand, coaches got out of hand, etc. And in the wake of the Thursday night game that's gotten so much attention between Hopkins and Wayzata boys basketball teams, we thought it'd be a good idea to talk to Double T, who got into the subject on the In the Zone Saturday, revisited it with us today, and said, look, this for him is once again about the adults in the room and not being adults in the room, whether that be head coaches, whether that be administrators. And he thinks to a certain degree, as hard as it is for officials sometimes to be the heavy, that he does think maybe you have a better chance of staving off that nonsense if the officials feel comfortable stopping the game, bringing the coaches over, and saying, we're done with this stuff. We know what's at stake. We know it's volatile, but you have to. The part of the job is for them to also attempt to set the tone. Now, that may be easier said than done in certain environments, certainly. Ultimately, I think they did call the proverbial, offsetting technical fouls on the two head coaches. How would we have known? Which
in that chaos?
That's true. Which doesn't mean a lot.
Oh, they got texts?
Exactly. Didn't really seem to matter.
I feel like we should do the show from the section final at this point.
Maybe we should.
I don't know if I'll be allowed there.
It might be dangerous.
Might have to be a Blakemore day.
3:30 to 4 is when we chatted with Double T. That'll be podcastable later. Jonny Athletic joined between 5:30 and 6:10, and he might have I might have handed him a couple of hanging curveballs to get in a couple shots, particularly on Hopkins, although I think there's definitely room for criticism when it comes to the coaching department on both sides. But that was between 5:30 and 6. Spent a decent amount of time in the middle of the show looking back on the Saturday Night Live special last night. There's still maybe more meat on that bone for tomorrow, which we might indeed get to. Louis is scheduled tomorrow. Somebody is asking when Mike Conley is going to return to the show. I think that's open-ended. I mean, the problem this week is they don't play till Friday, and they might be a situation where they're all kind of let free to do whatever they want to do.
So I checked in on it today, and that's exactly right. They're all flying to Houston Thursday to practice Thursday, then have the game Friday. So it will probably be Tuesday or Wednesday next week. They have a game Monday, I think, against OKC. But I did check on it this week because we wanted to have them on last week, and it didn't work out. It has been a while. So it should be early next week.
I think don't we play Oklahoma City like 3 times?
Pretty close.
Couple to 3 weeks?
Yes.
And they might be out for revenge because we
played with them.
We beat them, but it was a schedule loss for them because they had played at home the night before. So they had to come all the way here. We played the night before, too, and both games were at home.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And, of course, we won the one that made no sense to win, and we lost the one that made no sense to lose.
In case anybody forgot who the Timberwolves have been all season long, going into the All-Star break, they gave us exactly who they've been.
There's not any
question. A puzzling loss to Giannis and Dameless Bucks, and then no doubting. First time Oklahoma City's ever lost wire to wire.
Yeah.
Where they never led.
Well,
the whole season
and the head coach knew it. Because he called timeout within 90 seconds, and you could tell he's trying to he felt it in his bones, and he was trying to do something about it. He called 2 quick timeouts, I want to say, before the 6-minute mark. And so he had good instincts about his own team because they were really never they made it interesting, but they were never really in it. And it was a good game for the Wolves as well, including even our guy Luka got some praise for a change. On that occasion. We didn't hear much about Luka's bad defense in that game. He played very active. So it's kind of an abyss period. And to that extent, Fan and a Man will be followed by Dan Patrick tonight. Obviously, hockey is off. Well, I should say hockey, I mean the Wild. They're done for a while. Wolves are done for a while. I don't know when the Gopher men or women play next.
Men play tomorrow night at UCLA.
Oh, that's right, UCLA.
Women play Wednesday night at Purdue.
Okay, fair enough. So by the way, we had the conversation with, who do we have in studio?
Andy Luger.
Andy Luger was great. There were some podcasting issues. I don't know if they ever got resolved where they were done in the wrong sequence or something.
We're having a weird issue where they're posted correctly.
Okay.
Because we do it 3, 2, 1,
right,
so people can listen.
Yeah.
We've done it for years. For whatever the reason, they're not hitting in that sequence.
Well, just do your best piecing the thing together. If you didn't hear it, it was a lot. We had a good conversation with him for a solid hour in studio. So, as I said, Louis tomorrow, much good hockey to discuss, including the fights, and it all starts at 3 o'clock. We'll talk then.